You're listening to the New World to Go podcast with your hosts, Redbyrd and BDLG.
Hello and welcome to another episode of New World to Go. I am your host, Redbyrd, and with me is BDLG. Bordy, Super Bowl Sunday, dude.
Yeah.
Or if you're listening to this, it's not. So you know who the winner is, and we don't. Congratulations. Dude, we got a little bit of I think we got some new stuff here for the listeners, especially if you guys don't pay any attention to Reddit. So we're gonna go through this interview from GameStar. It is a game coverage publication, and Scot Lane himself sat down for an interview with these people. So we got a little bit of new information to digest. This should be a fun one, Bordy. And we're gonna get right in there. But first, we want to make sure you guys are subbing to our YouTube channel. We put out tons of content. Mostly New World stuff right now. So 5 days a week, we're putting up videos for you guys over there on the YouTube channel. So go check that out. VODs of this podcast are over there as well. And if you're a YouTube listener and you have time or a hard time fitting in the video, dude, we make a podcast. This is an actual podcast. So go over to Apple or Google Market or whatever the heck your preference is of podcasting platforms. Go download the podcast. I mean, hey, man, if you don't care, dude, just do them both. You know, it helps us out. We appreciate it. So yeah, guys, thank you guys for your support. Honestly, you guys are killing it. We get tons of interactions and everything on the YouTube channel, and we appreciate you guys. So thank you for that. Also, guys, New World fans, we're getting you guys primed and ready for New World's release because we have tons of content going up over there. The map will be fully updated. All the guys that we have on there currently will be updated, and we'll be putting out more new guides for you guys then as well. So check out New World fans. Bordy, got anything else?
Yeah.
I mean, we're self-sponsoring our own podcast right now. So.
No, yeah, I think you nailed it, man. I think you nailed it.
All right, cool. Yeah, like we said before, there was an interview put up from GameStar publication over there on Reddit with Scot Lane himself again over the future plans in New World and the most recent changes that they've had. So we're going to break this down a little bit uniquely from the actual flow of the article, but you should be able to follow along relatively well if you're reading this or have read this before. So the first thing we're going to discuss are the things that were mentioned in here, but the changes to questing and story. So these are something that's pretty big, I think a pretty big deal with the flow of New World. Now, as far as story goes, the only thing they really had were those lore books, Bordy, during the preview event. So it's good to hear from Scot Lane on these particular topics.
Yeah, it is. It's very encouraging because story and lore behind an MMO is incredibly important, I think. And New World has a unique opportunity to make some really, really in-depth, really awesome lore. And we've talked about that before, so it's encouraging to hear that they are looking in that direction and working on the story for the game.
All right, you're still lagging a little bit, Bordy. So just for the listeners to know, it's not your radio or your YouTube video. Bordy's he's having some internet difficulties on this episode.
Rip, dude. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's all
I apologize.
Good. It's all good. I think we're going to be fine overall. So basically, okay, so the first, and I'll try to lead. I'll try to talk more. How about that? I'm all hopped up on caffeine right now, so it'll work out just fine. We're not gonna
get many listens on this episode.
Well, I mean, or we'll get more. We'll never know. We'll find out.
Maybe.
So
Maybe.
let's see. The first question is from GameStar, and we'll kind of keep these so you guys know that what's an official New World commentary. And I mean, when we're talking official, does it get more official than Scot Lane himself? You know what I mean?
Yeah, think so.
Let's etch it in stone. I mean, although he was the guy in the video that said that. Never mind. We'll just keep going. First question is, after drastically changing your course from PvP and survival to a classic PvE MMORPG, what have been the biggest implements you've made in PvE gameplay? So, Bordy, I thought this was a pretty interesting question. Scot Lane answered, "We've made so many important changes. If we had to choose one, it would be the improvement to our questing system. Since the preview, we've taken the feedback of heart to heart and added more quest types. That was our main focus for everything that is coming up or coming together right now." So, now, Bordy, this was kind of a meme during the preview event, which is basically the fact that you just kept doing PvP and PvE faction quests to level, and it seems like they've taken that feedback and now they are going to do or expand upon the questing system as a whole.
Yeah, drastically needed. I don't know what they have in store, but they need to do something for the questing system because it wasn't that fun. It wasn't that engaging. And so this is encouraging to hear, man. We need good quests. We need, since they're pushing more in the direction of the questing system and more in the direction of kind of a sandbox or kind of a theme park versus sandbox MMO, we need a good questing system in the game. That needs to be a part of it. So it's encouraging to hear that they're working on it.
Yes. So now, as we kind of go into questing, GameStar asked a specific story quest. So what can we expect from story quests? What will the mechanics look like? So Scott, a traditional dev answer: we don't want to spoil the surprise, but quest variety and depth of interaction during the quest areas we put a lot of effort into. That said, quests will be more exploration, discovery, and interaction. Some even scripted events. We also want to add more quests so that the main story continues into the end game after the Azoth story. So that's interesting. I think specifically he means the Azoth staff story or something like that. I know that in the preview event, that was like the main quest line, which was centered around the Azoth staff. So it seems like they're going to carry the main storyline past that at this point, which is good news.
Yeah, that's very good news because the main story got cut off really, really early in the preview event, man. There wasn't much to do after you got, once you got the staff, that was it. And you could get the staff really early on. So the story does need to be extended out for sure. And I would like to see some more interesting characters that we encounter and some people that we see and some of the NPCs we can get involved in and invested in. And then maybe some of those NPCs maybe die during the story or something to kind of have some emotional attachment to the game and to the characters in the game. What'd you say?
Nah, Bordy wants you to become emotionally attached to NPCs, and then he wants them to die.
I just kill them off, dude.
Yeah. Game of Thrones in true Game of Thrones fashion.
I mean, maybe not all of them, but something that makes a good story. Something that gets you emotionally invested and attached to the story. That's what makes good questing in a game, is that you're kind of engrossed in the story, man. And in the preview event, there was none of that going on. I don't think anyone was really engrossed in the actual story of New World.
There was not even a single character that we cared about. I mean, if we're being completely honest, so and that's a big part, Isabella, like you said.
Yeah. Isabel in the preview, and then Captain Thorpe was kind of cut short there. You had some interactions with him, but they weren't very in depth or intriguing, or there was no really
reason.
Reason. Yeah, there was no really. There's a term I'm looking for, but I can't find it right now. There was no depth to the story whenever you encountered Captain Thorpe. So I would like to see some more of that, man. Tell me more about who he is. Tell me more about what's going on with that situation. And then whenever I kill him, I have a reason to go do it, or why is he such a villain, or those types of things, man.
Well, dude, GameStar apparently feels the same way you do, because the next question that they asked was, how is New World's story going? Is it more of a support for exploring the game, or does it drive the player in linear fashion? So Scot Lane replied, our world experience team loves to tell the story of Aeternum visually. There are clues about the world and its history scattered around the world. For example, look carefully at the statues and ships. We want to expand in the future. We will also support it with lore pages that tell stories of areas in detail for everyone who likes to read deeper into the lore. So, Bordy, we already kind of knew, or in the current iteration of New World, or at least the preview event, that the main story was going to be told during these lore pages. Now, Scot Lane basically reaffirms that is going to be the most often found lore source, is going to be these lore pages. But Bordy, what are your thoughts on, this, they've already kind of went through this story quest. And so that seems to be mainly the only actual way that they tell story in quest form will be the main story quest. And it seems like a lot of the exterior lore or the surrounding lore will be told during these lore pages.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. So I like the idea of having like a main story told through the gameplay experience, so that if you're just a player who doesn't care too much about the lore, but you want to enjoy the questing, you can go through there, get a good story, understand what's going on in the game, get a good grasp on what's happening there. But then if you're one of those people who's kind of a lore nerd or want to really look into the story a lot deeper, you then have the option to go read the lore pages and find the lore pages and then get additional detail about what's going on there. I don't think the lore pages should be something that's required to read to know about the lore, but it's something that is a nice touch, like for the people that really want to dive deep into the lore. They can go find those things and read them, and I think that's good, man. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the lore pages either. I do think that they definitely need to flesh out some actual characters or players in this story for us to be passionate about, because if they do ever institute instance content such as dungeons and raids, who are we fighting? Why are we going to fight them? That's a big deal about PvE. And dude, I'm a lore nerd. I like PvP, but I also like to know why I'm PvPing. It helps me be passionate about the faction that I'm aligned with, or the war that I'm participating in. So yeah, dude, definitely this benefits all players, I feel like, is this story, and I think it's a big deal. So Bordy, the next topic we have is fighting, crafting, and the world of Aeternum and loot. Now these are I think an interesting conversation that him and the interviewer had. So basically, the first question in this category was, since some journalists or influencers have already played New World, what kind of feedback have you received, and the most important changes you're planning on that feedback? So this is interesting because I think we see this a lot as people who cover the game. They do listen to feedback very well. A lot of the changes that they made in these recent alpha patches, not only just the simple like releasing of these alpha patches to the public, which is I feel like a big step in the right direction, they have also listened to specific feedback from the preview event and from the alpha players, and they are implementing them in the game. So here's Scot Lane's comment on this. We got amazing feedback from players during the preview event and the alpha, and we're using that to sort our priority, interesting word there, towards launch. We're focusing on more mid to in-game content, like the new zone Reekwater that we've unveiled a few months ago. Plus, more features that are just plain fun and deliver on the promise of a world to lose yourself in.
Ooh, yeah.
Dude. Okay, so we're working on more game modes. Yay. Land masses, AI variations, weapon types, quests, and more. So, dude, we've seen some of these things implemented in New World so far, but, dude, some of these we haven't, which kind of plays into, and we know we're getting close to this, another February alpha patch notes, dude. Are we going to see some, first question, dude, are we going to see some new game modes in here, dude? Because that's one thing we have not seen yet.
I hope so, man. I hope so. I hope that we get some. I hope in February we get some big content drop, right? Like we've seen a lot of fixes, a lot of things that are happening to push in the right direction for sure. But I want to see what they're working on content wise. Even if it's not like, hey, here's all of the details for the system, but here is what's like at least a teaser. Like, hey, here is the new game mode. We'll tell you more about it in the future, but this is what we're working on right now. This is what's getting implemented right now. I would love to see that, man, because that'd be very encouraging for the mid to late game content, like they're saying. Because as of right now, the January patch notes still haven't included much about mid to late game. So I know everyone is wanting to know what is the mid to late game content to work.
Game
nobody
modes,
knows that.
dude. New game modes. It has to be, according to this answer to this question, dude. And there's not a lot of tinfoil hats we got to put on to know that, because the game needs them desperately. If we're going to talk about tying people up in an in-game experience, there needs to be a variety of content to do. And right now, I think there are some good starts to those things, but I don't necessarily think it's something that can hold people long term. Now, this is one of the things that I think is very interesting too, is he's means priority towards launch. which means we're not trying to slam a bunch of content in between now and launch. We are prioritizing the things that we feel like the game needs to get to a launch date, which is very encouraging to hear from someone who's like desperately waiting for this game to launch. Is that they aren't, they know that they need to prioritize some things to get done, and then they continue to work on more stuff as the game is considered live.
Yeah, absolutely, which is totally fine, man. I mean, it's an MMO. Give us updates as we go. But let's get the game out, man. Get us some core features, get the game out, and let's rock on. Now, with that being said, I also want a solid, fleshed out experience whenever the game releases. But I also don't want them to try to cram in all of these features and all of these things that maybe not, it don't necessarily need to be there to launch the game. So yeah, it's encouraging to hear.
Right. So now, specifically to new activities, GameStar asked, group dungeons and raids are the most iconic features of a classic PvE MMORPG. New World appears without this mechanic in the traditional sense. How will the game compensate for this, and what will in-game look like? Now, here's Scott's reply. This is something we frequently discuss. After the preview, we made it clear that we would concentrate more on mid to end game content. We'll have more to say about that very soon, dude. That is an answer that, I mean, all but confirms that we are going to see classic or traditional dungeon raids, right? I mean,
yeah, it's the way I read that too.
We're not reading too far into this because, again, the question we followed up before this was mentioning new game modes, and he that is a word or a selected group or phrase from Scot Lane's mouth. Now, as this guy specifically asked about group dungeons and raids, he says we made it clear that we would add mid to in-game content, which is also what Scot Lane said above. And so we'll have more to say about this very soon, dude. I mean, I would be surprised if we don't get them at this point. Because, again, the direction that they're taking New World into, it doesn't make sense if you're looking about, like, content that which keeps players, like, satisfied and progressing, and a way to tell a story, which is also something we talked about in this interview. Dungeons and raids make a really, really, makes a lot of sense when it comes to adding a new game mode.
Yeah, in my mind, this is a confirmation. I mean, you're right. He all but said it. I mean, after the preview, made it very clear that we would concentrate more on mid in-game content. Like if there weren't going to be dungeons and raids in there, you would think that he would kind of allude to that in that direction.
Right, not at this time or something.
Yeah, right. Like we're thinking about that, but that's not something we're planning right now or on release or something like that. Maybe a more generic answer in terms of like saying no. This is basically saying, yeah, that's what we're adding. Yeah. We just don't want to tell you about it yet. So yeah, I think it's happening, man.
They don't want to tell us about it now because they're going to tell us about it in February's alpha.
In February, maybe. Ooh, I hope so.
Here's some more follow-up questions to these particular topics. First and foremost, New World is very dependent on active guilds that conquer and manage cities. Is there a mechanic that will prevent a city from being run by an active leader for too long? Or an inactive leader, for too long. This question answered by Scot Lane is the system itself does it. Settlements run by inactive companies are taken. Likewise, well and fairly run settlements will receive the support of the players. We already see that in the alpha. So this is interesting to me because, an inactive leader is something that I just couldn't, I'm sure will eventually happen. But what's interesting to me is like what happens with an inactive leader of a faction that is the most active. Like, they still don't have a mechanic to where like a active syndicate guild can take away the territory from an inactive syndicate guild, which is something I think they need to explore. But this is a pretty straightforward answer here. The data suggests that this is going to work itself out.
Yeah, which I hope it does, man. We dropped a video on the YouTube channel. Whenever this goes live, that video will have went live yesterday.
Unless you're listening to the podcast, and then it's live today.
True.
Yeah, dude.
Podcast goes live earlier than the YouTube video does.
Our podcast listeners get rewarded.
But that's right, they do. But either way, video that goes in depth discussing the faction system and things that we would like to see along those lines. So I'm not going to talk about it a lot here, but yeah, this is a pretty straightforward answer to him. And there are some things I'd like to see changed with that system, but we'll see what happens with them. And hopefully they have that under control and they're taking data. It sounds like they're already seeing things at alpha that they're taking data from to understand how that's working. It seems like they're pretty happy with some of the things that are happening. So hopefully it goes well on launch.
Yes. All right. So the next question we have is, let's see. I want to make sure we don't lose anything here. How big is the New World map compared to other open worlds? And I thought this was a weird, kind of an odd question from GameStar because we have seen up until this point most of the map during the preview event, and then of course during the Reekwater event they revealed another zone. They haven't added or specifically stated that they've added anything since the preview event, so this is an interesting question to me, but Scot Lane has a very interesting answer to it, which I think kind of made the question more interesting, which is Aeternum is set on an alternative historical Earth and it's magical, so we don't really know how big it is. I guess you'll have to wait to find out yourself. Now, we already know that they have planned on adding more land masses to Aeternum. It would make sense that, they're going to do it in this fashion, meaning parts of Aeternum are just left unexplored initially. So what do you think about that as new ways to add land masses during future updates?
Yeah, I think that just leaves it open-ended to say that the map is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow with expansions and that type of thing. I do think we'll receive another couple land masses or another couple zones before it releases. We got Reekwater. I think we'll receive probably two more is my guess. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea. Maybe we'll receive more than that. Maybe we won't get any more at all. But I do think we'll get another couple zones before it releases. And then beyond that, man, I think this just leaves it very open-ended to say that, hey, we're going to keep expanding on this world for time to come and make the map bigger and bigger and bigger without giving an exact size of, what they expect the map to be.
Right. And I think that generally in the form of New World and how it's laid out as far as most zones are kind of level oriented. So some zones are 0 to 20, where other zones are more built for 20 to 40, or we have the in-game zones for the north of the map. It just makes sense that as they're adding content and adding, what would be considered in-game activities, they're going to add more in-game zones like Reekwater. Because if you think about it, most of the player base is going to be expanding upon or expanding towards those in-game zones. If they're going to add more, land masses and territory, it makes sense to them to continue to add more in-game areas to compete for. I don't think a lot of us questioned whether that was going to be the case or not. But I thought Scot Lane's answer was very interesting, because we kind of think of Aeternum as this island, this static island, but obviously we saw with them adding Reekwater and then potentially, continuing to add more, it just kind of plays into that magical island feel, right? Who knows what's going to happen? And that opens up a lot of space for them to kind of explore as they add more content to the game. So here's a question about fighting. Fighting feels very powerful, but many players complain about the overly strict animation locks. Do you plan to continue using feedback to make the combat system even more fluid? So Scot Lane replied, "We've made numerous improvements to the combat system since the preview. We'll keep improving the battles as long as New World exists." Obviously, a very dev-oriented answer, but at the same time, I think a good one, because we want to not only see them continue to improve New World's combat system, but I think it's important to know that they have made a ton of new improvements since the preview event. So if you haven't played, obviously a lot of people haven't played New World since then. I think we're going to be in for a surprise when the game launches, because they have made a lot of improvements to combat already.
Yeah, I think that this question is probably an old one for us that are following the game very closely and look at the patch notes, because they've already addressed this a whole lot since the preview event. And so I think this question was kind of almost almost not an invalid question, but one that's kind of just old news at this point, right? Because they're already addressing stun locks. They've already addressed all of those things. They've already addressed cooldowns. They've already addressed so many things in the combat realm that I think if you're following New World at all, you already knew the answer to this question before you read the answer from Scot Lane.
Right, and the same one applies for this next question, so maybe we don't have to discuss this so much. Can you get stronger equipment without crafting, or is it self-crafted equipment significantly better than loot? We know the answer to this. Scot Lane replied as well. You can get equally powerful gear from crafting and adventuring at the same time. The equipment has different strength values, but is equally powerful. The different strength values thing is interesting. I wonder how they're going to, explore that avenue, and that'll be interesting. But I think generally we knew that they're shooting for this. It's very difficult to pull off, but what they're shooting for gear that is equal in both crafting and gathered through PvE. Obviously a good thing. All right, so here's where we get real interesting, dude. Or is the future plans? Here's some stuff that we already kind of discussed. That other question about new game types or new activity types. But here they kind of go into more about that. So how do you want to establish New World alongside MMOs and MMORPGs like World of Warcraft? So Scot Lane has a pretty extensive answer here, which I think is interesting. The action-based combat system is the greatest innovation. In New World, you play offensively and defensively, and your position and timing play a role. Our action combat system not only works for 1v1, but scales up to 50v50. In addition to our struggles, I think our setting and art style set us apart. These are some of the ways New World is different from traditional MMOs, but we will also have some deep mechanics that MMO players love, like character progression, a long-term persistent world, robust crafting, and player-driven economics. So, Bordy, this is a pretty large answer, a lot to break down here. One of the things, and this is, again, something that I know a lot of our fans that continue to follow New World particularly probably have recognized already about New World, but me and you and Taken, we cover this game extensively. These are things we have conversations about all the time, the things that set New World apart from the games that we're so used to. And he nailed it on the head, dude. Scot Lane feels the same way that we do. The action combat system is extremely unique, something that if they continue to flesh upon and dive into, can set this this particular MMO apart from them and the world itself, the alternative history setting, which is not done. We usually see a lot of high fantasy in MMOs, and so New World kind of sets itself out here. One of the things that's most interesting, Bordy, and the first thing I would like to ask you, dude, is the player-driven economy thing. Now, me and you have had a lot of discussions on the podcast about this, but dude, this is still like a really big part of this game that they want to continue to drive home. And this is a recent interview, and Scot Lane himself said it, player-driven economy. So what are your thoughts here on Scot Lane doubling down on this?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there's some things that are going to have to be done to the economy to make it a true player-driven economy. One of those is an item sink, man. We have no item sink in the game right now. Your gear, whenever it breaks, you can just repair it. It doesn't break completely. So it's going to be interesting to see what they have in store to continue to work on the player-driven economics of the game, because I don't know exactly how it's going to work. Right now, it's okay, but I worry that once people have played it for months on end, it's gonna the economy, I think, could get stagnant potentially. So it's interesting if they're really trying to hone in on that and push that fact. It'll be interesting to see what they have up their sleeves to make the economy continue to function and to function well as a player-driven economy without items breaking, without an item sink. I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna go, but we'll see. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's, again, they're still adding and they'll continue to add. Let's be fair here. They're putting out massive amounts of content in every month. So as they add more and more, obviously they can continue to flesh out this economic system. One of the other things that he mentioned that I think does or stood a decent amount of progress towards is the character progression thing. Now, right now we have basically character progression is tied towards your leveling up and getting to assign stats towards whatever build you want to do, and I think that's a good start. They also
Yeah.
have the weapon system that basically you choose whatever 2 weapons you yield. They've recently adjusted it from 3 to 2, which we both think is great. But those are the only 2 levels of character progression. So it remains to be seen what else are they going to add in here, Bordy, to make us feel like as we level up, our character is progressing towards something. Because I think there is something needed here because if character progression is going to be a big part of your player experience and try to get people hooked into this game, I think they need to explore a little bit in this category as well.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
All right, so the next question, which I thought was a very bold one for this guy to ask, is what is your vision of New World in 3 years? Now, we've heard, obviously, New World has a 10-year plan, but that, obviously remains to be seen, of course. We just want the game to launch initially, so we won't step too much further past that point. But Scot Lane did answer it. He said, "Wow, what a nice question. We talk about it a lot, and without going into too much detail, we build a big, beautiful, and yet scary world. I love the scary part, dude. Horror is a cool twist on an MMO in which you can lose yourself in. Not only because it is large, but also because the range of activities and the challenge of exploring the deep lore. When I play New World, whether I'm fishing in a remote part of the world, harvesting herbs, fighting in a great war, it takes me away to a faraway place. The vision is to add more of that and create new and unique experiences for players." So again, doubling down on the added activities in the game, but adding more of the same, Bordy, which I do think New World does a good job of. Setting a unique environment that players can kind of get lost in. The art team and the design team have done a great job to place a foundation in this category. But I can't wait to see what they have planned in the future for, continuing to flesh out this world.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're just wanting to double down on what they're doing already, but I don't think this question really answered anything we didn't already know from reading above, right? This is a pretty generic answer, but I don't know what we would have expected. I don't know that we would have expected him to give any super specifics for this question, because I think above, some of the answers were pretty straightforward and pretty direct, and we got what we wanted there. I mean, I don't know what more did we think was going to come of this, I guess. I don't know. Like, the vision is to add more of that and create a new world, right. A new and unique experience for players. Great. I'm all for that. Pretty generic. There's no specifics there, but sounds good. I mean, the answer's good. I'm happy with what he said.
Well, and it's interesting. I think one of these questions are often sometimes especially when you're interviewing someone like as high up in the company as Scot Lane, I think those are the ones that they'd probably tell you to steer away from. Like, we can't release any new information about the game.
We can't tell you the features that are going to be in the game 2 years from now. You know what I mean? Like, if they were to say like, oh, well, we're adding X, Y, and Z dungeons in the game, and then 2 years from now they don't because whatever reason, then they just shot themselves in the foot, right? So they can't answer that stuff.
Yeah, but I respect the guys or girls boldness with the question, even though maybe and maybe he meant like a general vision, like what do you see New World becoming? Obviously a success other than a successful MMO, because I think a lot of people that are working on the game right now would love to see that. It's interesting to see Scott answer the question, which was good. So the last one, and this is a big one because it's a little bit of a trick question, but may give us some, at least a roundabout release date, Bordy. And what is your plans for 2021 after the release? So GameStar, he basically, I think, was trying to trick Scot Lane into pinning him down for at least the 2021 release. So Scot Lane replied, New World is a live game, so we'll be adding new content and features all the time. I can't get too specific just yet, but we want to stay close to the rhythm we have during alpha. That's awesome. So more land, more weapons, more opponents, more activities, simply more. So Bordy, this is one of the things that we commend New World on all the time, and specifically right now as they continue to put out these patch notes to people, the public, dude, they're adding a ton of stuff every month, and they want to continue this pace as a live client. Bordy, what do you think about that initially?
That's a lot, man. If they add this much content and this many changes and the things they're adding right now during alpha every month, it's going to be crazy. Like it's gonna be crazy. That's a lot of stuff to continue to add to the game. I think the only other game that adds maybe that much content is ESO, and they do it on a regular basis. But I don't even know if they add it every month like that.
Yeah, they have a lot of recurring stuff that.
Yeah. I mean, the rhythm during alpha is every month, man. But let's back up a second, because every month we're not getting new content in New World. All right. So I don't think we should get overly excited or overly crazy with that. I think every month, coming in and balances and fixes and bug fixes and all that stuff will probably happen. And I would imagine that actual content probably won't come but every 3 months or something, like a new zone or a new weapon or something like that. Because I do think it is possible to add too much content too fast to an MMO where your players cannot experience the content before you're adding more. And that's a bad problem to have. It really is, because you can overwhelm your players with too much stuff. Like if they add a new quest line or something and I go and experience that quest line, but before I'm able to finish it, they're already adding more. It's like you never feel like you can get caught up. So I think there is kind of a fine line there that you have to work with. But I do like that they're going to continue to update and add things and whatever. I mean, you don't want a game to go stale or stagnant either without consistent updates. So it's kind of a fine line there, but I like the answer.
Yeah, and to your point, they're not always adding like a new zone or new in-game content. They're adding a new weapon or new fixes, improvements to systems. And I think those things are perfectly fine to do, especially if they're actual improvements to the systems you currently have. That the crafting one was a really big one this previous update. And the way that they fleshed out crafting as it compared to it was that we knew in the preview event is pretty massive. So, continuing to expand upon those particular systems in the game, whether it be PvE or PvP or crafting or gathering, I think can be done in this nature without overwhelming people. But to your point, I do think that if you're talking about just adding more actual content that needs to be completed when you get max level, I think that can be dangerous too as well, especially initially as you have people that, can't play the game at 8 hours a day that do want to experience content as it comes versus consistently being behind all the time. I think there is a cadence to that works as well. But dude, that's it for the interview. I thought it was a very, fairly good. I thought that, obviously Scot Lane's a master at this already. He can dodge a question better than anybody. And not that he's dodging, obviously. The place he doesn't want to release information is on an interview like this. Obviously, they want to have the initiative and be able to put out the content themselves when they put out these alpha updates and, do these events that kind of include, people like GameStar and IGN. But I think they most generally do it on their own terms. But it was kind of cool for them to take this interview and give us, I think a lot of insight into what they're doing or working towards, like when the game goes live. Now, and this is something that I was alluding to, dude, 2021 seems to be the year that we're going to see New World, because Scot Lane did not really step back on that. Would you typically see them say, like, we're not, we don't have a release date yet, is what typically they would say, but he did not say that. So I think we all knew this, but I think New World's coming this year, hopefully. I would say most generally that's going to be the case. So obviously it's good to see him at least not shy away from that, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that about does it for the interview. If you want to look it over yourself or dive into these details, Reddit is the place to go. That's where the interview was translated, or at least typed out. I thought thank you for whoever posted that on Reddit. And yeah, I think it's good information and a good tie over until we get some more news. Hopefully next week at the earliest for what's new in New World.
Yep.
Okay, Bordy. Well, why don't you go ahead and dive into the company of the week for us here?
Yeah,
got
man,
it?
the company of the week. Yeah, I got it. Nuclear Brothers. They're a region EU faction undecided language English. Their focus is PvX size 51 plus. They are recruiting. Welcome to Nuclear Brothers Clan. We're a gaming community of players that we play all together, respect each other, and have a lot of fun. A nice community that you will return to, a place where everyone is welcome. And this is the first company of the week that we've had with a trailer. They have a video trailer that you can go check out.
What?
And they have a Discord as well, and all of that stuff will be linked in the description below and in the podcast descriptions as well.
Nice, dude. A trailer. You guys got to check that out. I'm
Yeah.
going to go check it out after this podcast. I didn't know that they had one. That's dope. All right, guys. Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. Obviously, we're putting in a lot of hard work over there as far as Studio Loot goes to get you guys videos daily, Monday through Friday. Also, New World fans. We put a ton of work in over there, and our buddy Taken does as well. And we can't wait to show you guys what we've been working on when the game goes into a non-NDA state, which is currently not in. So any work that we're doing right now, we cannot put out. So you know, if you visit the website, obviously you can check out articles and fans, or excuse me, the map. But you know, just know that stuff is from the preview event, and there's been a ton of changes there as well. All right, Bordy. Well, why don't you tell? Well, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet?
Man, just go follow Studio Loot stuff.
Perfect.
YouTube,
Awesome.
Twitter. Yeah, that's all we need to do.
Yeah, same. Big same. All right, guys. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to you, even though, you know, you've already experienced it. I hope you had a great time. Hope you had lots of good food. Hope there were cool commercials. Hope the Chiefs won. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening. And this is an awkward. Well, I'm just going to sign off now. Goodbye, everybody.